The whole premise of artificial intelligence is that essentially computers do not have senses like we do. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another Blazar Vision Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence. What is it? How do we use it? And how does it learn? And this is going to serve as like a base podcast for future ones where I talk more about AI. Now, just to give you a little background on myself, I'm a computer science major and I do software engineering professionally in my day job. And part of my passion, part of computer science, a branch of it, is artificial intelligence and learning how that works, how to train models so that they're more effective, and how do we get models to be effective, essentially, and how do we make them artificially intelligent, basically. And the whole premise of artificial intelligence is that essentially computers do not have senses like we do. And I want to give you guys examples of it in practical terms that we can all hopefully understand if I do my job right. So my goal is to try to explain artificial intelligence using a building example. We're going to talk about an example in the form of a magic notebook, and then we're going to kind of build upon it. And just before I get into it, for those who are really experienced with artificial intelligence, my goal here is trying to disseminate this information to the average person. And I am no expert in artificial intelligence. I'll just say that from now. I have a good understanding of how it works to some extent to be able to explain it at a high level, I think, to most individuals. And so with that being said, I do want to talk about it. I'm not currently in the field, but I'm in a field where artificial intelligence is used. Like I use it at my job. I program and I've used artificial intelligence. I've read papers on artificial intelligence. Like I know some of the basics of how it works. I don't know the latest and greatest technologies and techniques for artificial intelligence. But before we get into that, I want to give you guys an update on the podcast. And I have to say thank you so much to you guys. There has been a large amount of you tuning into a podcast. I think we have over 100 views on all the platforms on the full podcast. So that's incredible. I'm so grateful for you guys. Thank you so much for sharing and tuning in and listening. And some of you have reached out to me personally. Some of you have engaged with the podcast via likes or comments. Guys, that means a lot. And it goes without saying, but sharing and engaging is the best way you can help me out if you enjoy what I do. If you like what you're seeing and you want to see more and you want me to improve more, that definitely helps. I'll tell you that. And there's no shortage of gratefulness that I feel for this opportunity. I want to give you guys an update on the studio. So I'm still recording in my room, unfortunately. I really do want to move to my studio so that I have a dedicated space for all this stuff. I still do a set up, tear down style. So it takes a lot of time in my day. And so I'm forced to record these podcasts at night. Like it's 10:30 right now. So it's unfortunate, but this is just the time that I'm given my day job and other responsibilities. This is just the best time for me to do it. I don't really have an estimate yet on when the studio will be fully renovated, but when that's complete, I will have more guests on the podcast. Technically, we could have guests now, but we would be kind of constrained to my room, and that's not ideal. I kind of want to bring the guests back into the studio where I have a dedicated space. I still want to try to figure this out. I don't have a schedule yet for the podcast. As you can tell, my first episode was released on a Tuesday, and this one might be released on a Thursday or Friday. I don't know yet. It depends on how much time I have to get these out. Just to give you guys a preamble, a precursor to this podcast, I have been studying artificial intelligence as a hobby for many years. It's one of my passions. I don't really understand it to the level I wish I did, but I could tell you right now, I think this is like 7 years ago. I made this pamphlet, right? And I was going to make a pamphlet that summarizes my views on all forms of artificial intelligence. There's quite a bit of types of artificial intelligences, and we're going to touch on a few of them in this podcast. And the whole goal is to learn and appreciate what we have today in artificial intelligence, maybe also talk about some of the concerns about it the ethics of artificial intelligence. That would be very important. And that is actually a big topic and a very difficult problem that we'll talk about. But without further ado, let's get started. I have a working example that we'll build upon in this podcast to kind of help us understand how artificial intelligence behaves and learns. And we'll keep building upon it. We'll get a stronger understanding of what artificial intelligence does and how it learns and how it behaves. So let's start with this. We have, in our case, a magic notebook. This is my old notebook that I'm going to use today to discuss artificial intelligence. But I think before we get into it, I do want to show you guys this. I wrote this about 7 years ago now. And sorry about my handwriting. It's not the greatest. But let's read that for a second. I first want to acknowledge the exceptional work done in AI and its exponential growth in perfecting algorithms, etc. I plan to do work in AI in my near future. That's all I wrote. And I guess my work, other than actually working in the field, is to discuss it on a podcast. It's funny how life works. So in order to understand artificial intelligence, let's talk about a magic notebook. So this magic notebook, we're able to draw images in this magic notebook and ask it what the picture is. And it's going to guess what the picture is. So it's that simple. That's what artificial intelligence at an extremely high level does. And so I'm going to go ahead and give you guys an example with the magic notebook. As you guys know, I have the magic notebook right here. Here it is. The magic of the past for my case. So I want to draw a picture of a cat, and I want to ask our magic notebook if it thinks this is indeed a cat. Again, I'm drawing this upside down. This is kind of interesting because I'm focusing so much to make sure I draw a picture of a cat with a very long tail. All right. And big butt. All right, so we're going to ask the magic notebook, is this a picture of a cat? And let's see what it says. Oh, look at that. Oh, well. Yes, the Y is backwards. Yes, it thinks this is a cat. Guys, this is great. This magic notebook can guess pictures of cats. That's what it seems. But we're going to try again. We're going to give it a different example of a cat. And we're going to ask the same question, is this a cat? So this is the new cat. I want to ask the artificial intelligence, or the magic notebook in this case, now, is this a picture of a cat? Oh, God. All right, guys. So it guessed no. Now, aside from the drawings being bad, but the magic notebook, for some reason, it said no. Why did it say no? Well, let's try to reason about this. What is missing from this picture versus the other picture? So, as you can see, this cat is not looking at the picture. It has features of a cat, let's say pointy ears and whiskers, and maybe the shape of a cat with a tail, 2 legs, 2 arms, a tail, and a proportional head to body ratio, right? Something like that. And if we look at the front, and this one has a picture with a cat facing us. It has a face. We're going to draw one more picture, and let's see if it could get it. I hope you guys are enjoying this new perspective. I guess while I draw this, for those who are listening in on the podcast, I'm drawing a very terrible looking cat. Doesn't even have the right number of fingers. Nothing about this is realistic in the least. All right, so this is our third cat, guys. And it doesn't have pupils. Let's give it pupils. It doesn't look very happy. But we're going to go ahead and ask the same question. This is our third picture, third drawing of a cat. And we're asking the magic notebook, is this a picture of a cat? Let's see what it says. All right, guys. So the magic notebook came back and said yes. Now, this is really interesting. It did get this one right. So we're about right 67% of the time. It got one of them wrong, right? And it should have got it right. So what's going on? How is this happening? Let's try to understand this from our perspective versus the magic notebook. One difference between us and the magic notebook is that we have senses like vision to navigate the world. So when me and you look at this picture, we immediately think it's a cat, hopefully, if I did a good enough job drawing, that, hey, this is a cat. And we don't really think about how our brain really works when it does that, but it just kind of works. For the Magic Notebook, however, the Magic Notebook doesn't have eyes like we do. And so it's relying on a very different way to learn that this is a picture of a cat or not. Now, what's really happening is that it's looking for patterns. And based on whether it guessed right or wrong, it's going to weight those patterns that it finds using algorithms, which are a set of instructions that the computer can follow. Basically, yes or no statements, do this, move here, etc. Things like that. And it's doing a set of these instructions. And at the end of it, it's producing a guess. And the Magic Notebook is saying yes or no at the end of it. But it's not seeing the cat. It never sees the cat. It only could tell patterns about what a cat might be. Now, right now, the Magic Notebook isn't really good. It's only guessing 67% of the time. How do we make it better? Well, we could train our artificial intelligence. And for our Magic Notebook, it's no different. We could train it to be better. And how we're going to do that? Well, we'll go back to our first image here. Let's take a look. So in our first image, it guessed correctly. Let's tell it that it guessed correctly. So we're going to mark it with a big yes stamp, okay? You guessed correctly. And we're going to give it a little check mark. Just like that, okay? Let's go to the second example, and let's do the same thing. So this one guessed incorrectly, but it's actually a yes. So we're going to say that you guessed incorrectly on this one. We're telling it, no, this is a cat. And on our last one, it did guess correctly. Boom. We're going to give it a big yes. There we go. So let's take a look. So what did we just do there? Well, we're training the model. Think of it like this. When there's people training a artificial intelligence, it's called supervised learning. We're supervising this Magic Notebook to train it. We're telling it when it gets it right and when it gets it wrong. And based on that, and the fact that it trusts our answers at the end of the day, is how it learns. And so if I give you 100 pictures of a cat, I'm sure you will get at least 95 right. There's going to be some that are really difficult to see because some of the pictures I might give you are blurry pictures of cats, or the image is really dark and you can't really tell whether it's a cat or not because it's just dark. Or the cat's really far away and you just can't really tell the shape as well. There's a lot of factors that go into determining whether something is a cat or not. A picture, right? And so it's no different for this Magic Notebook. Just as we might have some difficulty in some cases, well, so will this Magic Notebook. And our goal is to use our vision to help this Magic Notebook learn. And so far, we gave this Magic Notebook 3 examples of cats, and it knows the correct answer for each of those cats. So when it guessed it wrong, it knows it's wrong. And when it guessed right, it knows it's right. And since it doesn't have senses like we do, what's kind of happening behind the scenes, you can imagine? It's not this straightforward, but let's make it a little bit more straightforward for the sake of this argument, is that it's looking for patterns, right? And I want to show you guys what's the commonality between all these cats that I drew. What's something that's similar? Well, pointy ears like this so far is something I drew in every picture that was a cat, right? As you can see here as well, I'm drawing pictures of pointy ears. I'm drawing something with pointy ears. And in 2 of the 3 pictures, we drew eyes. Here's one set of eyes. Here, the cat isn't looking at the picture. This is picture number 2. And in picture number 1, we do have a set of eyes. So in all 3 pictures, we do have a body for a cat. Each one has a body with 4 legs. And so that's something that it's looking for. So I want to pose the last possible drawing that we're going to do today. And I'm going to draw it with you guys one more time. I want you to kind of follow along with me if you can on what's happening here. I want you to think about what you're seeing. All right. So this is a picture of something. Now, if you guys thought that that was a baseball in the beginning, you would be right. And I'm a decent drawer, I guess. But hey, that was a baseball, right? No. Look, if this is like a morph between a cat and a baseball. And so this is a really confusing drawing. Now, when we look at that picture, we're pretty confident that's not a cat, right? A cat has a body, it has a mouth, right? This doesn't have any of those. So what's going on here? Let's first ask the magic notebook what it thinks this is a picture of and see what happens. All right, for the moment of truth, the magic notebook has come back with an answer. And it guessed yes. That's strange. I mean, me and you both can acknowledge that's not a cat, hopefully. And it came back and it's saying that it thinks it's a cat. Now, what could be happening here? Well, we only have 3 pictures of cats in our magic notebook. It doesn't have a lot of information on what cats are. And this was a really difficult picture for it because, again, the magic notebook doesn't have senses like we do. And so it looked at this drawing and it said, okay, we have pointy ears. I saw that before in these 3 pictures that you saw before, guys. We had pointy ears. We just talked about that, right? So it's looking, okay, there's pointy ears here. We have eyes and we have whiskers. So whiskers is another feature that it could possibly be looking for. I think all of our pictures, we had whiskers. So that's something that occurred in 100% of our previous pictures. That's really important to understand when I'm giving you guys these percentages. So in our previous pictures, there's 3 cats. All of them were cats, and all 3 of them had whiskers. All 3 of them had pointy ears. All 3 of them had 2 arms and 2 legs. So what's happening here is possibly it saw that there's whiskers. It saw that there's ears. It also saw that there's eyes. 2 of 3 of the cat pictures had eyes. And it didn't have a mouth. So I think 2 pictures had a mouth. This one and this one. And so it's confused on this one. It's not 100% sure, but remember, the magic notebook can only guess. It's not as confident as we like to think we are. So it guesses yes because it looked at all of these features and it's seen all of these features in previous examples. And so it guessed incorrectly. We got to tell it now, no, this is not a cat. What we have done is reclassified the image. We've corrected it. We are supervising the learning of this. And for every picture, we're going to tell it whether it's correct or not correct. So what I'm trying to illustrate here is that when we have a small amount of drawings that the magic notebook is trying to choose from, it's biased towards a certain amount of things. And so right now, why it guessed that this baseball is a cat is because of the pointy ears, the whiskers potentially, and the eyes. And it's seen that in pictures of cats before. And if it guessed it wrong, well, it could go back and say, well, this one did have pointy ears and whiskers, so maybe that's more of what a cat is. And so I want you guys to think about it this way. When a artificial intelligence is looking at a picture, again, it doesn't have eyesight like we do. What it's going to do is look for patterns. Some of the patterns look like this, where it's looking for sharp ears, pointy ears like this. It's looking for eyes. It's looking for whiskers that are straight lines, maybe have a little curve to it. And these are called parameters. They store a number between 0 and 100. And this determines how much bias is there. So if we take a look at this, guys, here's some examples of some parameters that this magic notebook might be using to figure out if this is a picture of a cat. As you can see, it's biased right now. It thinks the parameter that is pointy ears so far in all three drawings, forget this one for a second. Before this one, we had 3 pictures of cats. 3 of them had pointy ears. It's biased towards, it's saying, okay, cats have 100% pointy ears. And same thing with whiskers. It had, all 3 of those cats had whiskers and has eyes. Now, as a result of this 4th picture, where we try to confuse it on purpose so that it doesn't create a bias towards just these things, it's going to readjust these numbers. And so it's going to come back and say, okay, so it's changing all of the weights. It might give the eyes a higher number, right? Maybe because these eyes more resemble a cat. But the whiskers and pointy ears, from 100%, they went down. Now, I want to be very clear that these numbers are not, there's not a rhyme or reason to these numbers. I'm trying to use a simple way by showing, if there's 4 images, if 25% of them had pointy ears and 75% did, then I'm going to write those numbers down. But the actual numbers are not going to reflect that. And there's really not 3 parameters here. There's going to be a whole lot of parameters. You can imagine that for every feature you could have about a cat, there might be thousands and thousands of parameters behind that. So for example, we have a parameter called has eyes. Okay, cats have eyes typically. And so that's not the only thing that would determine if it's a cat. Like if it had human shaped eyes, that might not be a cat, right? So you can imagine just eyes and determining whether it has eyes isn't enough. And so there's really not 3 parameters here that are trying to represent what a cat is to a computer, because it doesn't have vision like we do. It's going to look at many, many different characteristics and types of eyes that it thinks are eyes and weight them the same way that we have done here. And so this is essentially how we train artificial intelligence. Now, we could build more upon this magic notebook example, and that is if we were to ask it different questions other than, is this a picture of a cat? We can ask the magic notebook any question we want to get an answer to. The whole idea is we have to give it some data to use to construct an answer. And so in our previous case with the magic notebook, guessing whether a picture is a cat or not, we're giving it pictures of cats and things that are not cats. And we're helping it train by telling it when it got it right or wrong. In other magic notebooks, where you want to ask it a different question, you're going to need a data set or a set of pictures or a set of problems with the right answers to them so that it could learn. And so this is a way computers can learn alongside of us. And you might be wondering, wow, computers are so dumb. It can't look like we can. And you're not wrong. Computers are dumb. But one thing computers have an advantage over us is that it could crunch these numbers really fast. Now, we could take a look at 100 pictures of cats, but it might take us a couple minutes to determine if they're all cats or not because we're much slower. To give you an idea, a computer, depending on how fast it is, it could look at millions of pictures of cats in under a second. Just to give you an idea. And it could run all of these numbers, keep changing all of these numbers, every single picture that it goes through in under a second. Yeah. So it is dumb to some extent, but since it has speed and it's able to crunch these numbers really fast, it could do some pretty amazing things. And that's building upon the Magic Notebook example at a very high level. I don't want to go too much further with that. I want to start talking about the ethics of this because Well, in order to talk about the ethics, we need to talk about some of the artificial intelligence systems that have been released by big companies. So OpenAI has released ChatGPT. This has been in development for many years, and they finally released it to the public, I think last year or a year and a half ago now. This type of artificial intelligence is trying to guess words back to you. You give it some words or characters, it tries to make sense of it in some way and just return back some characters or words back to you that you are biased to say this is a good answer or a bad answer. That's all ChatGPT is doing. It's not doing any math. It's not, well, now it's doing math, but its basic capabilities, what it's fundamentally trying to do is guess the next token. And it's biased towards generating a token that you're likely to give a thumbs up to as a response. Now, in our Magic Notebook, we were training the Magic Notebook. We were telling it when it got it right or wrong. And same thing at the organization of OpenAI, they have researchers and trainers that are training these models. These models contain these data sets that they're giving it a set of inputs, which are questions or paragraphs or anything that you write into ChatGPT, and it's getting an output back. ChatGPT is responding to that. And these researchers are basically saying, this is a good output or this is a bad output. And that whole thing is being updated. Now, to give you an idea of the amount of parameters that are ChatGPT, it's in the hundreds of billions. Now, it's rumored right now that ChatGPT is managing about 1 trillion parameters. I don't know how true this is. This hasn't been confirmed. But to give you just a size and magnitude of how big that is, every time we use ChatGPT and we're training it, it's adjusting all of those parameters, the 1 trillion of them, every single time that model is trained. And a model represents those parameters and those values in a given state. And so there's many different types of models, and there's many different types of models that are trained to do very specific things. ChatGPT also has capabilities to crunch numbers, has the ability to browse the internet now, and it's able to do your homework. It's able to generate realistic papers. It's able to answer your burning questions. It seems to reason like an expert would. It's able to handle many different types of tasks all at once. And this is as worse as it's ever going to be, because this model is continually being trained to be better. But there's a fundamental problem with ChatGPT, and it's the people who train it and the data that it has is biased. Now, this is a problem with all artificial intelligence systems. And this is not a shot at OpenAI, because every artificial intelligence system must have a bias. That's a fact. Whatever data you give it is a bias. And if you want to eliminate bias, you have to give your model unending data, all possibilities of data, and then you would have to sit there and classify it as useful or useless. And no one has time for that. And so they are biased, and they are designed to be biased. Now, the question is, how can we remove as much bias as possible so that there's fairness in the assessment and the answers that we get back from ChatGPT? And it's a really difficult problem. We don't really have an answer. No one really has an answer on how to effectively solve that. But the conversation needs to happen. And part of what I'm trying to do here is raise awareness, try to explain it to more and more people, because ethics has nothing to do with artificial intelligence. It's something all people are born with and understand to some extent and have the ability to converse about. And so if I can help you understand basically how artificial intelligence works, and you can help raise awareness about how we can remove bias and introduce more ethical guidelines to ChatGPT and other artificial intelligence systems out there, then I think that's a really good thing. And so we're gonna end it with that, guys. This was one really fun episode to make. It's really different. It kind of feels like a video, where I'm interacting with you guys and drawing on the screen. I don't know what you guys think about that, but I'm very curious to hear your guys' feedback. And I really encourage you guys to leave any feedback you can, whether you send me a message or you write in the comments of any of the clips that you see or in the full podcast itself. But that's going to do it for today. Really let me know what you guys think, and I will see you guys in the next episode. Thank you so much for watching. Peace out now.